with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Monday, March 18th, 2024. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, David Bellos, professor of comparative literature at Princeton University, author of Who Owns This Sentence? A History of Copyrights and Wrongs, co-authored with Alexandra Montagu. Also on the program today, Israel targets Al-Shifa Hospital again. EU humanitarian chief says there is no evidence to back the UNRWA accusations by the Israeli government. With partial shutdown looming for Friday, Republicans still can't find a way to an agreement. But one thing all parties have agreed on is suspending UNRWA funding until 2025.
1 in every 3 children under the age of 2 in northern Gaza is malnourished, by the way.
Vladimir Putin wins in a surprise landslide. It's a joke. National Association of Realtors to pay $418 million in damages and will change its commission rules. Could be a big deal, may not be a big deal. Supreme Court to hear a case claiming the federal government is guilty of censorship in implicitly coercing social media sites against providing COVID disinfo. U.S. steel sale to Nippon Steel getting antitrust scrutiny. Federal Reserve unlikely to cut rates this week. And Donald Trump having trouble finding a company who will loan him money to cover his E. Jean Carroll verdict while he appeals it.
It's a good investment.
Apparently, they think he.
No, I think that was the bond. The bond. This
Right.
is the one that, but that's not E. Jean Carroll. This is the fraud one.
Oh, this is the fraud
yes.
one. Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Much more money.
Much more money.
Near 500 million.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah.
I'll pay you back, really. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for joining us. It is Monday.
Hello. Fun day, Monday.
And I are back at it. $464 million judgment. You can't get anybody to loan him the money.
It's almost as if he has a reputation for not paying things back, paying people back.
Yes.
Yeah.
I guess that catches up with you.
Honestly.
I mean, after a while, it catches up with him.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's taken a
decades.
long time.
Couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
But that's also a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if I would risk that. I'm not sure what the upside is there.
Well, I mean, he's supposedly a billionaire. That's what he wants to tell the public. So this should be chump change for this fella.
I mean, it's still.
Left Schreckening says the audio is quite crispy today.
I don't know what that means.
We'll adjust that.
We riding a little hot?
Yeah.
It does seem a little bit hot in my ears, but I'm not sure.
Anyway.
And I don't look centered, I
think
guess,
we
too. What's
adjusted.
going on?
I think he looks centered.
Are the windows the same size?
I think I gave Emma a little bit more space just for a subliminal
what was
message.
that
Actually,
about?
I did notice that. I meant to fix that. It got a little bit off-centered.
A subliminal message. What is it? It could either be
Sam off the side of the screen.
It could either be that you want me to take over or that you think I need to lose weight. Anyway, hi.
All right. Well, thanks, folks. Thanks for joining us. and we got a lot to get to today. This is, I mean, it's sort of stunning to me that we see this clip of, we'll play this clip of Senator Van Hollen, when it's basically a foregone conclusion that the U.S., at the very least, as according to Axios, I believe it is, two sides were able to find agreement. This is talking about the second tranche of funding that could run out on Friday. Two sides were able to find agreement on U.S. aid for the Palestinians. Currently, such aid is funneled through the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, or UNRWA. But after Israel alleged that a dozen UNRWA employees were involved in October 7th terror attacks by Hamas, the United States froze such aid. Under the new bipartisan deal, U.S. aid to Palestinians can't be routed through UNRWA through at least March of 2025.
It's insane. Insane, because this is the way this is the most efficient way for aid to get to the Palestinian people right now. And what's quite inefficient is building a temporary port and airdropping aid onto people that is just like a single percentage point of what they need. It's also airdropped aid also killed Palestinian children last week as well.
But the bottom line is you can get the aid to the docks, but how you distribute it, there is one agency that has been there for years that has a network of distribution. It's also going to impact, and just to be clear, U.S. has been in, I guess, in the best of times for Gaza, the providing about 1/3 of UNRWA's total budget, and U.S. provided somewhere between $300 and $400 million, I believe it was. This is an existential crisis for UNRWA, and then obviously also for people in Palestine, not to mention in Lebanon and Jordan too, where it functions. But here is Senator Chris Van Hollen basically reiterating in part what the EU humanitarian chief said, which is like, there's no evidence of anything that they claimed. Never mind the idea of taking an agency with 13,000 people and saying we're going to cut their funding because of the actions of 12 people, supposed alleged actions of 12 of their employees, is absurd. It's absurd, particularly when you note that, like, even pre-October 7th, unemployment in Gaza was 50%. Yeah. So it's not like there's that many people who are employing people. And it's just absurd. But here is Van Hollen. Meanwhile, the deal that is on the table is going to defund UNRWA for at least a year.
Report prepared by the Director of National Intelligence about the Netanyahu government claims about that agency. You seem to be implying that the links to terror groups are unfounded.
Oh, there's no doubt that the claim that Prime Minister Netanyahu and others are making that somehow UNRWA is a proxy for Hamas are just flat out lies. That's a flat out lie. If you look at the person who's in charge of operations on the ground in Gaza for UNRWA, it's about a 20-year U.S. Army veteran. Mm-hmm. You can be sure he is not in cahoots with Hamas. Netanyahu has wanted to get rid of UNRWA since at least 2017. That's been his goal, not just in Gaza, but also in the other places you talked about. And if you get rid of UNRWA in Gaza today, it is the primary distribution system for food and aid. So if you cut off funding for UNRWA in Gaza entirely, it means more people will starve, more people won't get the medical assistance they need, and so it would be a huge mistake to cut them off.
Can you explain why you believe that the prime minister is trying to dismantle UNRWA, which is the agency that has 13,000 people distributing aid? No one else has that kind of infrastructure in Gaza.
Well, that's exactly right. And there have been allegations made by the Netanyahu government that up to 14 of those 13,000 people were involved in the horrific October 7th attacks. We should investigate it. We should hold all those people accountable. But for goodness sakes, let's not hold 2 million innocent Palestinian civilians who are dying of starvation. Let's not hold them essentially accountable for the bad acts of 14 people. Netanyahu's wanted to get rid of UNRWA because he has seen them as a means to continue the hopes of the Palestinian people for a homeland of their own. And he has been opposed to a two-state solution. This has been his prime.
The reason that he wants to defund UNRWA to the what's her last name, Maggie, I forget.
Brennan.
Margaret Brennan, is because he wants them to starve to death.
It's because they feed people. It's not incidental. That's why he wants to do it.
Yeah.
Well, what is stunning about this to me is that you have Van Hollen saying that we are getting outright, unmitigated, bald-faced lies from the Israeli government about something that is pretty material. And this is like, even if we stipulate that the charges against these 12 to 14 members of UNRWA are legit. There's UNRWA has put out a statement, I guess it was last week, that many of its workers were essentially tortured or
forced
confessions on participation by some members of UNRWA in the October 7th attack. But even if we were to stipulate that out of any pool of 13,000 people, you might have other people who might be involved in, in that attack. You've got a U.S. senator basically saying that the Israeli government is now just lying.
Yeah.
Not that, as far as Schumer went, was, we think he's ill-intentioned. We think he's not doing it right. Whatever it is. This is now they're just lying to us. And yet, when you look at this budget deal, they're still trying to promote the idea that we're going to give an extra $14 billion to the Israeli government. But at the same time, we're also agreeing that we're going to essentially crash UNRWA by destroying its funding. It's
aid in the starving to
effed up.
death of people in this genocide. I spoke to Bill Deere weeks ago, who is the director of the Washington office of UNRWA. And he said originally, in response to the claims, they provided no evidence. They have provided no evidence for their claim that up to 14 members of UNRWA participated in the attack. And he stopped short there, essentially, of making a proclamation about those claims, because even though I thought most of what Van Hollen said there was very good, he is going to be reticent to make that case because the Democratic president took those claims without any evidence at face value, and immediately on the day that it was determined that Israel is plausibly committing genocide in the International Court of Justice, Biden took those claims with zero evidence at face value. So as much as I appreciate Van Hollen being a good voice on this, he needs to go further and directly call out the president for buying into this BS.
Yeah, this is where it becomes wider than just Israel. This is the entire West lined up the exact same day that ICJ report came out to do this, and it's complicity in the famine, the intentional famine of Palestinians going on right now.
At the end of this hour, we'll give you an update on the family we were helping raise some money to get out of Gaza, and most of them have gotten out. The men have not, but they're also have been using the funds that we've sent to not only help feed 20 other families, but they're also distributing some food and water that they were able to get. We have images of that, and we will and some video. We'll play that at the end of the program. In a moment, we'll be talking to David Bellos, professor of comparative literature at Princeton University, author of Who Owns This Sentence? A History of Copyrights and Wrongs, co-authored with Alexander Montague. First, a couple of words from our sponsor. I've been trying to get off of the, there's really been two things. Well, there's probably been a lot of things I've been trying to do, but one of the big ones is I'm trying to have to lug home much less plastic from the supermarket and save space around the apartment. And this does all of those. I'm talking about Earth Breeze Eco Sheets. They look like a dryer sheet, but it is in fact ultra concentrated liquidless laundry detergent. It is the best of both worlds. Earth Breeze is tough on stains and odors while being kind to the planet and your skin. And then I would also add, it takes it basically storing like this stack of papers here. I'm holding my hand, not even that high. It's incredibly convenient. I can't believe it took them this long to invent this kind of thing.
Right.
Earth Breeze has a deal for you. Right now, you can subscribe to Earth Breeze and save 40%. Go to earthbreeze.com/majority to get started. Want to thank Earth Breeze for supporting the show, of course. But it's been a revelation. I have one little envelope, and that's I don't know if it's 40 washes.
Wow.
As opposed to a big plastic jug of stuff that's going to drip all over the place.
And no plastic.
They are dermatologist tested, these Earth Breed Eco Sheets. They are hyperallergenic. They are free of bleach. They are free of dyes. They are free of parabens. And for people like me, yes, there is a fragrance-free option, which I have availed myself of. I don't need my clothes to smell like anything except for not dirty. That's it. But yeah, they have other smells if you are one of those type of people. But like I say, with Earth Breeze, there's no heavy lifting or measuring sticky blue goo from a massive plastic jug. Earth Breeze is lightweight. Cardboard packaging, again, takes up a fraction of the space in your laundry room. I mean, I don't have a laundry room. I have under my sink.
Oh, that's where it is?
In an apartment.
Yeah.
In an apartment. Which makes it even more important. If I had a laundry room, then it wouldn't be as, you can bring in this massive jug. I mean, and all of a sudden it's just all you're doing is contributing to the tremendous amount of plastic for no reason.
Or if you have to go to the laundromat, you don't have to lug a jug to the laundromat.
That's true,
just
too.
take something in your hand.
Earth Breeze offers flexible subscriptions delivered via carbon offset shipping right to your door because unfortunately you'll never run out of laundry, but now you'll also never run out of detergent. These tiny sheets can stop millions of detergent jugs from entering our ecosystems. In fact, 500 million detergent jugs end up in landfills and oceans every single year. Check it out. Right now, our listeners can receive 40% off Earth Breeze just by going to earthbreeze.com/majority. That's earthbreeze.com/majority, earthbreeze.com/majority to cut out single-use plastic in your laundry room. Claim 40% off your subscription. Also sponsoring the program today, a simple but meaningful gift that you can give to your mom, to your dad, to your grandparents, to your sisters or brothers, aunts, uncles, anybody who might be interested in keeping in touch with you and also keeping in touch with you in a way that you don't actually have to talk to them. Yes, that's one of the beauties of an Aura digital frame. You can put up, here's some pictures of the vacation we took. Here's some pictures of all skateboarding. Here's, when the cat puked, whatever it is. And you can send it. In my instance, I send it to my sisters and my dad, grandparents love this stuff. And it's super easy to do. Obviously, app on the phone, but you can load up the pictures and even set up the Wi-Fi password on the unit for the person you're giving it to, and it makes it completely Like, this is digital frames for dummies. And you don't have to worry about the technical know-how of the person receiving the gift. It is really, it's ingenious. And you will see why it was named the #1 digital frame by Wirecutter, The Strategist, and Wired. Comes with unlimited storage, simple controls on the frame. You can upload as many photos as you want. And your mom or whoever you're giving it to can pick the perfect pictures that they want. Right now, you can save on the perfect gift that keeps giving by visiting auraframes.com. For a limited time, listeners can get $20 off their best-selling frame with the code MAJORITY. That's AURA frames.com, promo code MAJORITY. Terms and conditions apply. All right, quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking to David Bellos, professor of comparative literature at Princeton, author of Who Owns This Sentence? A History of Copyrights and Wrongs, co-authored with Alexander Montagu. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigland on the Majority Report. Joining us now, David Bellos, professor of comparative literature at Princeton University, author of Who Owns This Sentence? A History of Copyrights and Wrongs, co-authored with Alexander Montagu. Professor, welcome to the program.
Glad to be here.
Let's just start to make it easy. What's the difference between copyright, patent, and trademark?
Patents have to be applied for. They don't arise just by themselves, and they are restricted to the jurisdiction in which the patent is given and to other territories linked to it by treaty, and they last at most for 20 years. Trademarks also have to be registered. They don't just arise. You have to apply for a trademark, and you have to prove that that mark is in continued commercial use, and every 10 years you have to reapply to renew it. And if it's not in commercial use, it just lapses and anybody can use that name. Copyright has become something totally different and vastly more monstrous. Copyright arises on creation. You scribble a line of verse on your table napkin, the copyright is yours. Copyright lasts for a huge amount of time, for your lifetime and then 70 years after that. Or if you're doing work for hire for a corporation, 95 years from publication. Copyright also includes sub-rights or associated rights that are much more complex than those involved with trademarks or patents, because if you own the copyright, you own the translation right, the right to abridgment, the right to anthologies, the right to adaptation on screen and stage, and on and on and on. So copyright really is the big thing, and patents and trademarks are relatively apply to a relatively restricted number of things in ways that are easy to understand and better administered than copyright.
And we should say your book is basically tracks the history of copyright. When did these three ideas, in terms of the idea of like owning ideas or owning devices or owning so-called intellectual property, did they develop simultaneously, or what was at the forefront of that?
No, they did not develop simultaneously, and I must correct you, none of these laws allows you to own ideas. Ideas are not privatized, at least not yet. and not formally, even if some people are rather clever at using these laws to make it seem so. Patents and copyrights sort of have a common early history in 15th century Venice, when one of the most important privileges granted by Venice was indeed for a printing press, which was a kind of patent kind of thing, except that it was making books. And so the idea of licensing books through a system of privileges accompanied the spread of the printing press throughout Europe and the rest of the world. But the idea of copyright, of there being a particular property right in, not in books as physical objects, but in what's in the book, not the ideas, but the form of expression, that's a creation of the 18th century. And it's only in the 19th century that a clear distinction began to be made between copyright in written and visual art and patents for inventions and discoveries. So the two paths begin together in Venice in the 15th century, but they move apart into quite different regimes between the late 18th and middle of the 19th century. Trademarks are probably the most ancient. I mean, in medieval Europe, innkeepers with signs of the king's arms on the pub could indeed prevent anybody else opening a pub down the street with the same sign. So they have a long and as an informal history. But trademark legislation has increased vastly in the last 50 years.
What role, because I mean, we have this, patents and, to some extent, I guess, copyright are mentioned in our Constitution. What role does the U.S. have in setting the sort of the terms for copyright internationally at this point?
None at all. The United States had copyright laws from the 1790s, but they were largely unused. It was too much of a bother, and in any case, U.S. copyright laws did not recognize any copyrights in works by non-citizens until the 20th century. They didn't fully internationalize U.S. copyright till 1976. So the U.S. was an outlier, much resented by the British and the French for 150 years. And it has always been following on behind the copyright, or the creep forward, if you like, of copyright that took place in Paris and in London, and then, of course, in Prussia and other countries. The United States did not sign the Berne Convention of 1886, which is the basic sort of framework for international copyright, until, guess when? 1989. Just 5 years before Albania. However, since then, the US has turned the tables and has introduced much more extensive, deeper and broader protection for created work. And by piloting the scheme whereby, since the US had joined Berne, it made every other country that wanted to be a member of the World Trade Organization also sign up to Berne. So you could say that that's one way in which the US has taken the lead. The way in which the US is in the lead is simply that by insisting that software programs and computer code are literary works, and I'm not joking, that's what the preamble to the 1976 copyright says, that computer programs are literary works. By doing that, it's created, of course, a vast proprietary software industry, which it dominates and for which it extracts a huge tribute from the rest of the world every year.
Let's talk about that, Eric, because I'm curious as to what switched within the U.S. regulatory scheme or the what choices were made, from a political economy about that? Was it the idea that people could see that computer software was going to move forward, and there was a desire to allow corporations to be able to sort of milk that? I mean, what was it that changed?
Well, I'm afraid, Sam, it isn't really a story of a profound thoughtfulness, or indeed even of a well-directed power grab. It happened in the most anecdotal and idiotic way imaginable. It goes back to the early 20th century when player pianos were all the rage. You know, those mechanical pianos that played a tune that was controlled by punched paper tape, that when it went round, it made the keys turn. Because sheet music was then copyrighted, or copyrightable, music publishers objected, and they said that these punched paper tapes are actual copies of our sheet music, and this player piano is infringing our copyright every time a restaurant owner puts the thing on to entertain his guests. And there was a lot of squabble about it, the outcome of which was the special arrangements made for musical performance, but that's a different story. But also the formal recognition that punched paper tape could be considered a created work in fixed form. They had no idea what they were doing. But you're too young to remember, but I'm not. I'm old enough to remember in those early days of computer terminals in the
1960s,
what were they? How did you feed instructions into them? Punched cards and punched paper tape. And it was by analogy with the punched paper tape ruling of 1911 that some clever man, I don't know who, pursued the case that his computer program was analogous to, and therefore deserved the same protection as the punched paper tape that powered a player piano. That's how it happened. That's the loophole through which an entire new industry was created long before anybody on the Supreme Court or in lawyers' offices understood what role computers would come to play in modern life.
Was that a Supreme Court decision? I mean, it sort of exemplifies a real dilemma with courts dealing with all sorts of, I think, technology that we're dealing with now, is that they just simply don't have a fundamental understanding of it. And they're literally looking for, well, it looks like that, so maybe it is that.
Well, that's the whole history of copyright that we tell in our book from the very beginning. The first great, how should we say, capture of copyright on by using an analogy of that sort was the British artist William Hogarth, you know, the painter of Rake's Progress and the Harlot's Progress. He argued that engravings were produced on a printing press. Books were produced on a printing press. Ergo, engravings should have the same protection as printed books. That's 1735, and I mean that's where it all started. And copyright has proceeded by such dodgy syllogisms ever since. And the computer software industry owes the proprietary software industry owes its existence really to this long history of dodgy analogies. I mean, you know, everything is like something else in some respect. I mean, you could say a jacuzzi is like champagne because they both got bubbles. Right. But it doesn't mean to say you should tax them the same. But in copyright law, that kind of argument seems to have held sway, or have won the day again and again over 3 centuries in dozens of countries. And it's most peculiar. And that's why we wanted to write the book, to explain to people things don't have to be this way. They've turned out this way by a sequence of really rather bizarre steps.
What ostensibly, the copyright protection is to protect an author, but it has sort of it's sort of not worked out that way, has it?
Absolutely not. No. I think that the claim that the origins of copyright are intended to protect the author is a very angled, a slightly self-interested and often totally hypocritical way of understanding history. What those early copyright laws did between the first Statute of Anne in 1710 and the Donaldson case and then the French law of 1793 was actually to create a vast public domain, because those laws took away from the printer publishers what they thought they owned, which was eternal ownership of the works they published. They gave authors a limited monopoly for 14 or 28 years. So only new creation in quite specific domains was protected and ascribed to the author. Everything else, from Homer to Descartes, was from that point on free to be reprinted in cheap editions without permission and as public property. So that's what I think copyright really was for. And yes, it did create later on in the 19th century circumstances where some people could earn a living by the pen. But there's never been very many who could earn a living by the pen, even under the most liberal domains. Regime, sorry. But what the owners of the means, the today's successors of the old publishing cartels have done, is to turn things back not to the way they were in the 18th century, but to the way they were in the 17th century, because those cartels and corporations now own the vast majority of commercially viable copyrights for a century or more, which is as good as perpetual. That's from my point of view, anyway.
How did it become the case that corporations, whether they purchase it or hire, create a work for hire, have a longer period of time? It doesn't make any sense.
Nope.
No, I'm sure there's a reason why, because there's a lobbying power.
There's not a reason why. There is a story as to how it came about. But I'm afraid that the book we've written really doesn't pay much respect to the idea that there is an intellectual substructure to copyright, that there is an ideology to it. There's a set of happenstances. The reason for corporate copyright, at least in the United States, seems to have been an extension to book publishing of an idea that was already current in industry. That was called the workshop right, where the owner of the workshop owned any inventions made by his employees when they were on the job. And it's applied initially to those complicated works like encyclopedias and railway timetables and circus posters and maps and charts, of which there is no single easily identifiable author, but where they're produced by a whole collection of people. And those were the first sorts of works to be copyrighted in the name of the publisher, and not in the name of a creator. And that seemed to be okay, but that wasn't written into, that was a kind of a practice in the mid to late 19th century, but it was only written into law in 1911 with just a little line in that act, paragraph 62, I believe it is, where it says, for the purposes of this act, the word author shall mean employer.
Wow, nice.
Just one little bit of wording, and that's where it all comes from.
Let's talk about how this is. I mean, it stifles creativity, obviously, to some extent, maybe a great extent, and is exploitive. I should say also, full disclosure, we have had some experience in this. We make videos. And I can't be too explicit about it, because one of the things that happens in this situation is you're basically faced with the potential for a lawsuit. and
you just don't dare.
And you don't dare. And so you negotiate a settlement, and invariably that settlement will, I mean, this is all hypothetical, of course, would involve a, maybe a confidentiality type of thing about it. But hypothetically speaking, let's say we were to do a video 6 years ago, and it included a piece of music that was consistent with a joke we were making at the time on the video. Somebody goes, not even the person who makes the music, but somebody goes and buys the rights subsequent to that. Then subsequent to that, they are scouring YouTube. They find the use of the music, and then they can come in and sue. That, I mean,
it's dreadful. I know.
It's pretty dreadful.
Yes.
I will say, we made 22, hypothetically speaking, in my hypothetical, I went to law school for a year. That video, it doesn't matter if you made 22 cents on that video.
No,
right? It's not like
it's a statutory offense. Yep.
Yeah. How is it that it got to that point? Like, I can understand if I'm exploiting someone else's copyright work, and I'm exploiting it for my own commercial benefit, and it is substantially or even considerably reliant upon that copyright work for what I've generated. I mean, I can understand, like, that could be problematic, because I'm basically stealing or plagiarizing on some level and commercializing it. But that seems to be completely not even part of the equation. But what do you think about that idea that I am plagiarizing or stealing the value of it?
I reject utterly the word plagiarize and the word steal. They're not right. People use them as if they were somehow integral to the idea of copyright. But, the 1976 Copyright Act, just like the 1988 UK one and the even lengthier European Union documents on this, do not mention the word plagiarism once. What we're talking about is infringement. An infringement, plagiarism, you can get punished for under codes of honor. I mean, you could be sacked or you can be shamed. Plagiarism, no. Stealing is also really the wrong word. The lobby groups of the movie and music industries have carried out a long campaign since the 1970s trying to persuade everybody from Boy Scout groups to school teachers that copying is the same as stealing. But it is not. It is not stealing because you leave the original object unaffected. It's not in any way damaged by your use of it, nor have you prevented anybody else from using it. And to steal something, you have to do either or both of those things, in my view. So I use the word steal. So it's a horrible muddle, and it has become really quite vicious. And it is indeed, I doubt whether anybody ever intended it consciously to turn out this way. But what it means, have you noticed the modern style in documentary videos where people are interviewed sitting on a bar stool you can't even see in a room with a black background? It's very common now amongst documentaries. It's got nothing to do with artistic choice. It's so that you do not have to request permissions for the painting on the study wall, right, for the book titles on the shelf, for the carpet, if it's to be distributed in Europe, permissions for the furniture. Furniture is protected in Europe, but not in the US, etc. It's just simpler when you're trying to show something about the real world to show an entirely fabricated one.
Can you?
Well, I just want to follow up on that. It's like, where is the rationale for that? And because very often, like, you're not only not diminishing the value of these things, you're increasing the value of it, right? Absolutely. I mean, if I'm like, if you're shooting me in a documentary or whatever it is, and I'm sitting on a really cool chair, they may make some sales from that. I mean, if there's a million examples of this. I mean, what is the rationale here? Because there is no, it just seems like a monopoly for no apparent reason.
For no good reason. That's right. The way the copyright laws have been phrased and framed have created their own opportunities for making entire new businesses out of nothing. Trolling for rights, trading rights, venture capital investment in old songs, etc. It's got quite out of hand. And the reason that we have written this book is to tell people the way things are and really just ask, do you actually want things to be like that? Because the only way they're going to change is if new legislation is introduced. But you can't introduce new legislation without there being a large public discussion of these issues. And our view is that you can't really understand what the issues are unless you have at least some knowledge of how things got to be that way. Because searching for an intellectual rationale for this great ramshackle, sprawling thing called copyright is, I think, a fool's errand. It doesn't have an intellectual rationale. It has a history. And it's a history that's ended up somewhere that is remarkably like the circumstances of the late 17th century. My mother used to say you can't turn the clock back, and my word, we have turned the clock back.
Can you give us a sense of how threatening an overhaul of copyright law would be to some of these companies and their bottom line, like Disney or some of these software companies like Microsoft as well? But we've also covered on this program Bill Gates's fixation with intellectual property within the context of vaccines. But in terms of those software companies and these big conglomerates like Disney, what would a overhaul do to their bottom line?
Well, it depends how you overhaul it. I mean, obviously, if you did the sensible thing and said, no, copyright should last for the lifetime of the creator and then stop. And therefore, corporate copyright should last for a lot less than 95 years to correspond. Then for the vast majority of created works, it would make no difference, because the vast majority of creative works earn money, if they do earn money, for a few years at the most, and then become just historical curios. But it would make a difference for the big companies like Disney that continue to exploit almost 100 years later intellectual property such as Mickey Mouse that goes back a long way. I don't know how. I mean, I presume that it would, if you did, limit the length of term of copyright, it would reduce the prospects of earning license fees forevermore, and therefore somewhat alter the economics of the entertainment industry. But if that spurred the entertainment industry to invest more in younger artists rather than relying on forever farming their old favorites, I think that would be no bad thing. They obviously would object to it, and there'd be very powerful arguments because they've got lots of money with which to employ very clever lawyers. But I think it is really worth thinking about as to whether copyright ever needed to be as long as it has become.
Well, absolutely. And I just think, though, it's the piece to underscore the existential threat for these corporations and what it would actually mean. I think it makes the nonsensical nature of the law make a little bit more sense when you understand how many billions of dollars are involved in maintaining this kind of system.
Well, yes, that's right. When you have a set of laws, people adjust to it and they base their business models on it, and they use the powers that it gives them. And those have become very big businesses indeed. I mean, IP in the most general sense, I mean, trademarks, brands, patents, designs, and above all, copyrights now constitute a huge part of the US economy. Some have come up with truly amazing figures. I'm not an economist and I don't guarantee these numbers, but I have read somewhere that copyright-related industries in the US account for about 20% of employment.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I don't quite know how that number's put together, but it's a very large part and a growing part of the U.S. economy, and indeed of the world economy, as we consume. I mean, I know we keep on consuming bigger burgers, but actually, proportionally, we keep on consuming more and more. How should I say? Virtual goods in the form of TV and movies and songs and online newspapers and social media and TikTok and so forth constitute a larger and larger proportion of our activities and expenditures.
I would guess, complete stab, that 20% figure is that it's not that it's not necessarily copyright in its current form, but rather the nature of material that has been generated and ultimately becomes what we now call content. Because
maybe, but I think
part of it is a way of protecting their protection racket, as it were. And intimidating people from engaging in it and reforming it, because I suspect that we could have a much better system. And in fact, that number could theoretically be larger, even if it's not as profitable for a narrow set of players. So what would, if you were to look at reforms, aside from like just years, and I imagine that would be a big part of it, is like length of time. Yes. Like what would the reforms be?
Well, in our book, we're not proposing any new legislation. It's not a polemical book or a book that seeks to actually say this is the way copyright law should be. So I do want to make that clear. But it is a history of how we got to be where we are, and also a rather irreverent account of the not very respectable ideas and arguments that are used to prop up the current system. Most of them are really quite dishonest arguments. But yes, length of copyright, the duration, the term of copyright is what creates the high valuation of very successful works. But it does absolutely nothing to spur new creation. And I think that it is really time we looked at that again. The second thing that really should be looked at again is, what do we mean by a corporate copyright? How can an employer be an author? I mean, it's an abuse of the language to an employer. He isn't, and he knows he isn't. He just owns the rights. But in copyright law now, not just in this country, but worldwide, that word author has ceased to mean a guy who writes. It means the owner of the rights. And that's a perversion that needs to be turned back. And we need to say, well, is copyright law about keeping creators from begging on the streets? Or is it about something else? And
how would that, I mean, let's say we did institute that. Like, what would be the sort of knock-on effects of that? Would it simply point people to a certain reality that might then inspire a different regime for someone who is an author versus one who is, obtained the rights?
Well, it might and it might not, because people can be very devious. I mean, for example, the rights to the book that we're talking about now belong to me and Alexandre Montagu. But in order to get published, of course, we've signed a contract with the publisher in which we license that publisher to exploit the copyright in all possible ways for the duration of copyright. So it really comes to the same thing as the copyright in the book belonging to the publisher and the publisher belonging to a corporation, etc. So no, I think we would have to think very carefully about how to, or what we would want the outcome to be, to curtail corporate control of individual creators, so that at least some agency and some better deal emerges from it for actual authors and creators and artists. It's not easy to do, but that's what we ought to be talking about.
I just one more question too. Like, you cite so many cases in the book that are sort of ridiculous in some respects, where people are accused of like having heard a song or something like this, and there's just simply aren't that many variants of the way that you can put together notes. God bless you. But talk just briefly, and I should say, from our perspective, one of the things that has always been a potential sort of floating around danger is fair use. And my experience has been that I have a lot more opportunity for fair use based upon the size of the show and how much value it has maybe to YouTube in terms of like an advertising outlet. All of a sudden, my ability to employ fair use has expanded, which seems weird to me. I mean, can you talk about how sort of like, it's amazing to me that it's still this sort of subjective, and that these rules are really just sort of like a question of almost like just pure power, because, our producer will play a clip from a different show that they will have taken down, but we won't. And there's no rhyme or reason to it other than maybe we have just a bigger footprint.
The fair use clause in US copyright law, well, I will say, to excuse it, is written in rather vague language to give discretion to judges and courts over issues that it would be very difficult to determine in advance as to what is fair and what is not. However, the very vagueness of the criteria that that clause uses means that, well, you can never really be sure if it's going to work for you or not. And the sheer cost of the US legal system means that unless you are a big corporation, you really don't dare take it on, because the outturn of any fair use defense is not entirely predictable. And you could find yourself bankrupted by an ill-judged or unlucky piece of litigation over it. So the current state of fair use in the US, it seems to me, has a generally chilling effect on creators and broadcasters and entertainers of all kinds. You just don't do it. If in doubt, cut it out is what the word is, not just among filmmakers, but among, essayists and book writers and academics too. The guidance from my own university on how to handle permissions when writing academic work says pretty much the same thing. If you don't own it already, and if you aren't absolutely sure that it's in the public domain, forget it. Wow. Use something else. Say something else. So I think there really is a danger. Not a danger. I think it really is the case that our culture is getting narrower and narrower, because fewer and fewer people dare to actually say and quote and show all the things that they have to say or show or quote.
David Bellos, professor of comparative literature at Princeton University, author of Who Owns This Sentence? A History of Copyrights and Wrongs, co-authored with Alexander Montague, and of course, also whatever corporation decided to publish it. Now we know.
No, come on. No, it's published by W.W. Norton, one of America's last remaining fully independent employee-owned publishers.
Wow. Yes, we love them for doing this, but they're not responsible for copyright law, we should say.
Indeed.
Professor, thanks so much. We will put a link to that book at majority.fm and on our podcast and YouTube descriptions.
Thank you. Thank you for asking such good questions.
Thank you very much.
All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break.
Well, first we have an update, right?
Oh, that's right. We do have an update.
Some rare good news these days. Folks.
Yes. As you know, well, I guess it was a week or two ago. We were promoting a GoFundMe, and on Thursday, 2 Thursdays ago, you had Mohammed Al-Dagma.
I'm sorry if we butcher Al-Dagma. He called into the program, so we got to speak to him directly. And yeah,
he lives in Belgium,
right?
And his family was trapped in Gaza, as are obviously literally millions of people. His niece has Down syndrome, making it even that much more, difficult in terms of the stress and whatnot. And they were living in tents down in Rafah. There are ways in which to get people out, but it always involves money, paying
the Egyptian authorities
significant amounts of money. And so they were looking to raise, I think, initially $60,000 euros,
yeah.
And between you folks and just other folks who were also contributing to the GoFundMe, they raised that amount of money, and then they also realized, like, we have no, like, what happens once they get across the border. And so they raised their threshold for what they're trying to raise. In the meantime, the all of the mother, Muhammad's mother, sister, and 4 kids are in Cairo, Egypt. Here is a video of them. They've gone out to eat one night, and they sent a video. And this is really cute here. And so all of the kids and that was Faf, the girl, the first girl was given the thumbs up there. They're doing well. They found an apartment. The men are still in Gaza, and they're waiting to get the men out, waiting on visas. In the meantime, one of the updates that we have is that they have been sharing the funds to feed 20 other families, and now they've got resources, and they're handing out. They apparently secured water, and here's a video that they made of them handing out water and dates from the funds donated.
We put the music down just in case. They're relevant to our interview today. But
all the way down the music there.
Yeah, so you can see here.
And they're handing out dates and water, I imagine, whatever they could have found in terms of like what can feed people. But it really is incredible what people are doing just to help their friends. And of course, the South, because I have a feeling probably the Egyptian border is more porous when it comes to being able to buy stuff. The gray market, the black market, and getting some supplies. The north, of course, is where the UN and other aid facilities are saying, like, we're on the brink of mass starvation. But at least with this one family and everybody that they're helping, we could ease some, tiny part of the suffering there, and we will
keep updating you. But
we will keep updating you. We'll put the link that GoFundMe. They're still raising some funds again to both distribute food in Gaza and to help the family get set up in Egypt. And you can go and read on these updates. that have been every couple of days. They're putting updates there, so you can check that out.
Thank you to everybody who donated and who supported or shared. If you don't have the ability to contribute right now, the link will be in the description. But also, Hassan's audience. I think that was big when you went on
to
Hassan's
show,
stream.
and they responded really well. I mean, he is a fundraising juggernaut. And,
Yes.
really has helped people out. He's got a very generous audience.
Good people.
So very thankful for that as well. Just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you keep the free show free, and you get it free of commercials, and then you also get the fun half. A couple other things. JustCoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Keep your eyes open at shop.majorityreportradio.com. We're coming up on our 20th anniversary of this program, and there may be some special things showing up there soon. Oh, look at this. It's full of pens. This is just, it just happened to, this is just one of the old mugs that we had, original ones.
Yes.
That I had made up. It even has the old Air America logo on it, but I wouldn't, if I was going to reproduce those, I wouldn't reproduce it that way. I would reproduce it a different way, which people
Just
are gonna have to find
hypothetically.
out, hypothetically speaking. Also, amquickie.com, sign up. Great way to get a sense of what's in the news for that day. amquickie.com. And our Discord, majoritydiscord.com, over 10,000 people in there. So if you have any question about anything, you will have it answered there. From how do I get started organizing my my place of work to, what movie should I watch this weekend? I mean, everything is there. So check it out. Emma, ESVN.
Big show today since I wasn't here on Monday. So we've got a lot to talk about. NFL free agency, quarterback, Steelers shakeup, Kirk Cousins spurning the Vikings, Saquon going to Philly, March Madness as well we'll be previewing. Lots to discuss. YouTube.com/ESPN show today.
Matt.
Left Reckoning patrons, I talked with Matt McManus about Thomas Sowell, who is a conservative's favorite black guy to hide behind when they want to pretend like they understand economics. What Thomas Sowell calls basic economics, and basic in the modern sense of the word, I would say. So check that out, patreon.com/Left Reckoning. Tommy Shajan on Haiti tomorrow night at 7 o'clock Eastern Time.
See you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Anarchy.
Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it to my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Denner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males.
Psych. Fuck them. Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
lives matter.
Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back, 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 back. And the Africans are black, 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 black African. And the alpha males are black, 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 black. And the Africans are back, 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 back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100.
Can't knock the hustle.
Come on, fuck 'em, fuck 'em. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy.
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back, back. Africans are black, black. Alpha males are black, black. Africans are back, back.
Come on. Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report. We will get to the calls in a moment. Emma will be joining us shortly. We will turn on the I'll turn off the voicemails now. The number is 646-257-3920. We will get there in about 5 or 10 minutes. I think it's safe to say this interview would have made more sense on Wednesday with Emma's trademarking of Hump Day. Top 10 jokes aside, please take caller from a 401 area code. His firsthand experience setting up these mobile piers that the U.S. is going to put on in Gaza.